Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is here. Welcome back, everyone, for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Well, guys, it finally happened. Scientology finally filed its appeal. It only took them about 13 months to file this appeal. They filed it a month late and just magically was granted an extension retroactively by the courts. So it turns out that Scientology is not in settlement negotiations with Leah Remini on this lawsuit, which, to be honest, would have been a better turnout for Leah Remini. It's actually very bad news, in my opinion, based on the lawyers that I've consulted with and the opinions that I've received. Scientology choosing to go forward with filing this appeal is, well, here's the facts as I understand them. Leah Remini filed her lawsuit about a year and a half ago. Scientology filed an anti-SLAPP motion, basically saying Leah Remini is harassing us by filing a lawsuit against us for things that are constitutionally protected activity. If you file an anti-SLAPP motion and the judge finds in your favor, the party who filed the lawsuit has to pay your legal fees. Guys, this is why Streets LA, Scientology audit, William Good was able to get $150,000 judgment against Joey the Rocket. You guys, you know what I'm talking about. It's why William Good was able to get $170,000 judgment against the owner of La Poubelle Bar. Her name is I'm totally blanking on her name. Francoise Coster. Because, and guys, that was for restraining orders. So Francoise, for example, got a restraining order against William Good, but it was for protesting. It was constitutionally protected activity. So William's lawyer filed an anti-SLAPP motion in response to the restraining order. And guys, this is just a restraining order. William's lawyer was successful in arguing that anti-SLAPP motion, and the judge found in favor of William and against Francoise that her lawsuit was a strategic lawsuit against public participation, and she was responsible for William's legal fees. And that turned out to be like $150,000, $170,000. Okay. Well, Scientology filed an anti-SLAPP motion against Leah Remini, and the judge found basically 50% in favor of Scientology. So as it stands right now, theoretically, Scientology can ask for approximately half of their legal fees. And the judge in this case had said to Scientology, basically, you know, technically you're entitled to legal fees, but it's not going to be an automatic thing. You're going to have to ask for them, and you're going to have to argue why you should be entitled to them. Now, instead of arguing for those fees right then and there, they then said, well, we're going to file an appeal, because even though you filed 50% in our favor, we think you should have filed 100% in our favor. And so we're going to appeal this. It is my understanding and my belief that Scientology filing this appeal and going down this route is partially motivated by trying to really drastically juice up the amount of attorney's fees they can go back to the trial judge and ask the original judge and ask for fees. Guys, if William Good's attorney's fees for something as mild as a restraining order, for something that took a matter of months, was $170,000, how much money in attorney's fees do you think Scientology is getting ready to ask the judge to award them? The opinions I have obtained are no less than $2 million. And so, yeah. So this is not excellent news, but we're going to take a look at this appeal. We're going to see what they're arguing, and let's see if we can find out anything interesting from it. Okay, so, and yeah, this was just filed yesterday. I was able to get a copy of it today. Guys, I got to tell you, you know, one of the reasons more journalists don't get all of the documents, the legal documents, and then once they get them, they don't share them, is because of how expensive they are. They don't want to be the ones paying for them and then sharing them with everyone else. Everyone else gets them for free. So there was the filing itself, which is 77 pages. And then there was the appendix that they filed. Now, I don't know how many pages the appendix was because I did not ask for it. And I did not ask for it because I was told it was going to cost $450 to get the appendix. Now, this filing is 77 pages and it cost $25. I don't know much, guys. I grew up in a cult. I'm not great at math, but you guys do the math. If this 77-page document costs $25, how many pages does the $450 document? How many pages long is the $450 document? And how many journalists out there are going to pay $450 to get that document? I don't know, guys, but I'm not one of them. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In the Court of Appeal in the state of California, Leah Remini versus Church of Scientology International et al. Okay, appellant's opening brief. And we are going to jump forward to page 12 here. Okay, let's look at some of this. Appellant's opening brief introduction. Some people's idea of free speech is that they are free to say what they like, but if anyone else says anything back, that is an outrage. Plaintiff Leah Remini is one of those people, claims the Church of Scientology. This case involves Remini's lawsuit against the Church of Scientology International for responding to her vicious and inflammatory attacks. Both sides appealed after the trial court granted in part the church's anti-SLAPP motion, dismissing much of Leah Remini's baseless lawsuit. The trial court should have dismissed more. In 2013, after decades as a Scientologist, Leah Remini left the religion and embarked on a hateful campaign. Leah Remini produced television shows and podcasts attacking Scientology as, quote, pure fucking evil, poison, and a dangerous, vile cult. I have detected no lies. She asserted that Scientologists are pussies, okay, and Nazi youth who have done nothing good. Now, just for the record, Leah Remini didn't call Scientologists Nazi youth. Leah Remini was describing the state of mind of the teenagers who start working for Scientology at that young age. And I have also used that exact same language because I was one of those teenagers, and I can attest to that state of mind. It is a totally valid statement. Okay, who have done nothing good. And Leah Remini threatened Scientologists, telling them you should really think about what the F you say, because she has information about you too, about your family, and has come after other people who have supported Scientology. Leah Remini's bigoted rhetoric inspired a wave of discrimination, which unsurprisingly turned into violence. This is all BS, though. Just days after posting on Facebook, Leah Remini is a true inspiration. A woman drove her car through the glass entrance of a Scientology church and into the church's nursery. This is all grossly misleading and exaggerated. An assailant who had visited anti-Scientology websites with links to Remini's content murdered a Scientologist. Guys, this is how insane Scientology's claims have gotten. This so-called assailant was himself a Scientologist. There was an incident, I've covered it extensively in videos on this channel. There was an incident where a Scientologist and her son, I think they were Taiwanese, traveled to Australia. The Scientologist was joining the Sea Organization. Her son was coming along with her, which does imply that he was also there to join the Sea Organization, because you can't just bring your son with you. There was some sort of an altercation between him and a security guard, and the son did indeed end up taking the life of this security guard. It was one of their own members, and they're acting like this is just someone that Leah Remini had something to do with. It's totally crazy. Okay, so and a credited contributor on Remini's show spat on a church official. Again, that's another weird misrepresentation. They're talking about Donald Myers. He goes by the name on YouTube as Angry Gay Pope. And I think Leah Remini in the show maybe purchased some footage from Don and used his footage in the TV show. But Don was never a contributor to the Aftermath television show. But I do believe that Don spat on a church official because that's the kind of weird stuff that Don does. Okay, faced with no choice, Scientology fought back. It cataloged Leah Remini's vicious rhetoric and the wave of threats and violence it inspired on websites and Twitter, arguing that Leah Remini is an unhinged religious bigot who profits by spreading hate. It lobbied Leah Remini's media partners to drop Remini's content and urged businesses to stop advertising on her shows. And because Remini accused Scientologists of being morally depleted, people with zero compassion, Scientology exposed that Leah Remini's moral hypocrisy, including her references to children, including her own. I don't know if I can say this. All right, well, let's go for it. She is quoted as calling children a little bitch, a cunt, and a niglet, and her emotional abuse of relatives and colleagues. Because I've already read through this document, it's interesting. We're going to get into this more later on in the video. Scientology has sort of set this up in a way where, because they have gone to Scientologists who were Leah Remini's friends and gotten them to sit down and do videos claiming that Leah has said these things, it does appear that Scientology's argument is that they can, in good faith, argue that they, the Church of Scientology, has reason to believe that these things are true. And so they've done it in this way where it's like, it doesn't matter if Leah's friends are lying because Leah's not suing her friends. It matters whether Scientology had reason to believe they were lying, which Scientology is, of course, arguing, of course, we have no reason to believe they're lying, or we don't have, we have reason to believe they're telling the truth at least. And it's interesting because, you read something like this. You read something like Leah of Scientology accusing Leah of saying things like this. You're like, oh my God, this is horrifically defamatory. And you're like, yeah, but Scientology's not the one saying Leah said it. That's how they're removing themselves from the responsibility of this. They're getting her Scientologist friends who will lie about anything to say that she said it. Do you see what I mean? All right, let's keep going. Apparently, what was good for the goose was not good for the gander. In 2023, Remini sued Scientology for defending itself. In Remini's complaint, free speech is a one-way street. Her vicious anti-Scientology commentary is outspoken public advocacy, while Scientology's defensive speech is relegated to a smear campaign. The trial court largely rejected Remini's one-way approach. It granted, in part, Scientology's anti-SLAPP motion, ruling that many of Remini's allegations target protected free speech. But the trial court did not give Scientology the full benefit of the First Amendment. In some cases, the trial court incorrectly ruled that speech was not protected. In finding that Remini could establish constitutional actual malice, the court improperly focused on Scientology's alleged bad faith towards Remini and disregarded whether Remini presented any evidence of Scientology's subjective state of mind. And the court improperly declined to resolve whether speech that is protected and non-actionable for defamation could still support other causes of action. Remini may find Scientology's protected speech upsetting, but the hallmark of the protection of free speech is to allow free trade in ideas, even ideas that overwhelming majority of people might find distasteful or discomforting. This court should strike the additional challenged allegations. Okay, then they get into a whole history lesson about who Leah is and what Scientology is and her history in Scientology and all that stuff. We're not going to spend any time reading all that stuff. That's kind of a waste of time. Okay, but we are going to fast forward to 20D. Okay, the church, so Scientology moves to strike under the anti-SLAPP statute, and the trial court grants the motion in part. Okay, so we're still talking about the past here. Scientology moved to strike under the Code of Civil Procedure, on March 12, 2024, after extensive briefing and 3 hearings. The trial court granted the motion in part. The court ruled that Scientology satisfied its burden at step 1 of the anti-SLAPP analysis because Remini's allegations target protected speech and lobbying activity. See, isn't that interesting, guys? They do make the argument later on here that Scientology engaging in a lobbying effort to get Leah Remini's sponsors to drop her, or to get the podcast production companies to cut ties with her, that is protected under lobbying. And that lobbying and boycott is a form of lobbying, is protected constitutional activity, even if it results in economic harm. So there you go. Okay. At step 2, the court ruled that Remini failed to meet her burden for allegations that are barred by the statute of limitations, targeted protected speech, or conduct, or are insufficiently supported by Remini's evidence. The trial court denied the motion with respect to other statements and conduct, finding they are not protected activity and that Remini could establish actual malice. The Scientology timely appealed on March 29th, 2024, and Remini filed a timely cross appeal on May 10th. So really what was filed was a notice that they would be appealing. Scientology has only filed its appeal yesterday, and Leah has not filed her appeal yet. There was something here. That's right. Most of what we're going to be reading further on in this document is Scientology arguing that the judge did not require Leah, her team, to show any evidence of actual malice. And they get into the definition of malice, and having ill will towards someone is not actually malice. And actually even saying inaccurate statements. Anyway, they get into a whole thing. It's all pretty interesting. That's why I'm going to cover a lot of this stuff. Okay, so then I want to jump. Yeah, I'm going to jump forward to 28.2. where they actually get into this issue of malice. I found this stuff really, really interesting. Okay, 28.2. Public figures must establish that the statement was made with actual malice. The actual malice standard also flows from the United States Supreme Court's directive to give freedom of expression the breathing space it needs to survive. It reflects the First Amendment's policy of protecting some falsehood in order to protect speech. The actual malice standard is not satisfied merely through a showing of ill will. Negligence is insufficient, as is evidence that an objectively reasonable person would have known the statement was false. Reckless conduct is not measured by whether a reasonably prudent man would have published. Okay, that's a quote from a previous ruling. Instead, the test of malice is a subjective one. The defendant, in this case Scientology, must have made the statement with knowledge of falsity or with reckless disregard for the truth, meaning he had a high degree of awareness of probable falsity or entertained serious doubts as to the truth. The defendant must be aware of obvious reasons to doubt the truth of the statement. A conflicting picture is insufficient. It was as I was reading this section that I was like, God damn, Scientology really kind of inoculates itself against this type of accusation that it's knowingly putting out this false information, because it is sitting down. It's my opinion. I mean, obviously, you know, the judge and everyone's gonna this is the point of the proceedings, is for judge to make findings about this. But it seems to me that if Scientology can sit there and go, well, wait a second, Leah Remini was a Scientologist in good standing for, 40, 50 years. All of her friends here were also Scientologists in good standing for, 40 or 50 years. And they sat down and said that these things were true. What reason do we have to believe that they're not telling the truth? And then what evidence, on Leah's side, what evidence could they possibly provide to show that Scientology knew that these people were lying? Like it's very, very difficult. And okay, so let's keep going. Accordingly, circumstantial evidence of a defendant's state of mind, for example, the failure to investigate, reliance on unreliable sources, or evidence of motive, is irrelevant only to the extent that it reflects on the subjective attitude of the publisher. Courts must be careful not to place too much reliance on such factors, and the plaintiff must present evidence supporting the circumstantial inference. Rejecting, let's see, do I want to read that one? No. Well, let's see. Rejecting challenge to defendant's source because plaintiff failed to present evidence to demonstrate a low community. Oh, fuck that. I don't want to read that. Okay. Additionally, statements with some element of truth are logically less susceptible to a finding of actual malice. Circumstantial factors carry less weight if the statement has some element of truth. Importantly, a plaintiff's denial does not establish actual malice. A defendant need not accept denials, however vehement, because such denials are so commonplace in the world of polemical charge and countercharge that in themselves they hardly alert the conscientious reporter to the likelihood of error. A denial is evidence of malice only if it is conveyed to the defendant. Evidence of malice must bear on subjective state of mind. And if there is something in the content of the denial or supporting evidence that carries a doubt-inducing quality, the plaintiff bears the burden of establishing actual malice. That holds true at step 2 of the anti-SLAPP analysis. To overcome an actual malice defense, the plaintiff must establish a reasonable probability that she can produce clear and convincing evidence of actual malice. The clear and convincing standard requires that the evidence be such as to command the unhesitating assent of every reasonable mind. This requirement presents a heavy burden far in excess of the preponderance standard. How in the world? I mean, it's just how I'm thinking about this. How in the world would Leah's team, in this particular case, be able to provide such a convincing evidence of such a convincing standard that they can prove Scientology had very good reason to believe that the things they were saying about Leah was false, if they're relying on Leah's former friends and family members for the information? This seems like a very, very high hurdle, in my opinion. Okay, finally, it is a rule of federal constitutional law that actual malice requires independent appellate review. That rule reflects a deeply held conviction that judges must exercise such review in order to preserve the precious liberties established and ordained by the Constitution. Independent review applies with equal force in an anti-SLAPP motion. Accordingly, a reviewing court is not bound to consider the evidence of actual malice in the light most favorable to respondents. The constitutional responsibility of independent review encompasses far more than an exercise in ritualistic inference granting, which would compromise the independence of the inquiry. Whether a plaintiff can establish actual malice is not merely a question for the trier of fact, and courts must independently decide whether the evidence in the record is sufficient. I think we're about to get to it, but part of what Scientology argues is that the judge erred by seeming to make a bit of an allowance for claims that were being made by Leah's team with respect to malice, but not requiring any of the evidence of the malice to be shown. And let's see, I think they're going to be getting to that here. 32. Let me see what's next here. Okay, 32. Oh yeah. Okay. So the next section has to do with them basically saying that the lobbying that they did to, cost Leah income and sponsors is indeed protected constitutional First Amendment activity. So let's take a look at this. 3, constitutional protections extend to boycotts and lobbying, even if they cause economic harm. Boycotts and lobbying are protected First Amendment activity. Our California Constitution provides greater, not lesser, protection for this traditional form of free speech. Okay, we don't have to read all that. Okay, let me scroll through this. I mean, I don't think I planned on going through that whole section. Yeah, no, I did not. I did not plan on going through that whole section. Okay, 34B. Oh, okay. So this is the point. So starting from this section and for pretty much the rest of this video, they're going to go step by step, point by point, through each item that the judge didn't throw out, right? So for each item that the judge did not rule in Scientology's favor, they're going to go item by item and make their argument for why he should have. And let's go through this. Hold on. Hold on, I'm just muting myself for a sec, guys. All right. Sorry, I just got to clear my throat. Okay. All right, well, let's take a look at this. So, Remini's allegations target free speech or related conduct protected under the First Amendment. Because the trial court struck most of Remini's allegations, Scientology focuses on allegations addressing speech the trial court erroneously found not constitutionally protected. So this is why I wanted to go through these points, because I think it's pretty interesting that, remember, guys, every single point that we are about to go through is something Scientology is claiming is their constitutionally protected right to do these things to Leah Remini. Let's see what you guys think about it. Okay, item number 1, paragraph 90. Leah Remini is abusive to her mother and daughter. Nowhere in Leah's complaint or opposition to the anti-SLAPP motion does Remini identify with specificity when and where Scientology used the quoted language. Oh, okay. For that reason alone, Remini fails to meet her burden at step 2. Okay, fine. That was a layup, but let's see here. What are they saying? What are they saying here? The language in Remini's complaint appears to be her summary of allegations of emotional abuse made by her relatives and friends in interviews published online. See? They're saying we didn't do it. Her friends and family members did it. But because Remini has access to those websites, there is simply no justification for her to set forth only the substance of the statements that she claims are defamatory instead of the actual statements. Well, that seems reasonable. In any event, the assertion that Remini was abusive to her mother and daughter is protected speech. First, the Scientology affiliated websites and Twitter accounts identify the interviews supporting this opinion. Okay. One of those being Remini's close friend witnessed Remini calling her daughter a cunt and a little bitch. Remini encouraged her daughter to be violent, advising her to beat the crap out of a bully and grab her hair. Okay. A family friend witnessed Remini berating her daughter while she played on the trampoline. Okay. Another family friend witnessed Remini berating her mother for making mistakes on household tasks. All right. Remini's father stated that she verbally abuses her mother and daughter. Okay. Thus, the opinion that Remini was abusive to her mother and daughter is not an opinion for which the speaker has no factual basis. Rather, it is Scientology's own interpretation of those interviews and allegations, which are published on Scientology's websites, thereby leaving the reader free to draw his own conclusions. All right. Moreover, courts have held that elastic terms with elements of subjectivity are not susceptible of proof or disproof. Abuse is an example of such term. Oh my God, that is amazing. They're literally arguing that abuse can mean anything and is subjective, and therefore accusing someone of abuse is not actionable. And that is a very interesting claim to make, considering how freely the word abuse is thrown around in the ex-Scientology community. God forbid someone spoke sternly to you on a telephone. My pearls, they're abusing you. God forbid somebody told you you're just outright wrong. Oh, abuse. So I actually agree with Scientology on this point here. Sorry, guys. Okay. Abuse is an example of such a term. A claim that Remini is abusive to her mother and daughter is non-actionable moral criticism of Remini's relationships with her family. Subjective judgments are incapable of being proved true or false. That is confirmed by the setting in which the interviews were published, the websites and Twitter accounts directed at rebutting Remini's campaign against Scientology. These are settings in which the audience may anticipate efforts by the parties to persuade others to their positions by use of epithets, fiery rhetoric, or hyperbole. Okay, good. Super interesting stuff. Online blogs and message boards are places where readers expect to see strongly worded opinions rather than objective facts. Wow. That's an interesting statement. Given the history between Leah Remini and Scientology, the average reader of these websites and Twitter accounts would view the use of the term abuse as rhetorical hyperbole. Wow, this is incredible. Second, as the trial court ruled, Remini is a public figure and must establish that this statement was made with actual malice. But the test of malice is a subjective one, and there's no evidence Scientology subjectively believed Remini was not abusive to her daughter and mother, or that Scientology entertained serious doubts as to the truth of the statements. To the contrary, Scientology firmly believes Remini's treatment of her daughter and mother was emotionally abusive, and that belief is supported by the interviews described above. Alrighty. Though Remini partially denies the truth of the statements in the interviews, there's no evidence Scientology was aware of that denial. Evidence of malice relevant only to the extent that it reflects on the subjective attitude of the publisher. And regardless, denials alone do not establish malice. The denial must coincide with evidence carrying a doubt-inducing quality. Remini provides no evidence supporting her partial denial. For example, a declaration from her daughter, other relatives, or other witnesses. Okay, interesting. Similarly, while Scientology published interviews with various sources, Remini presented no evidence to demonstrate a low community assessment of the source's trustworthiness or unsatisfactory experience with them by Scientology. Oh, okay. Now I get the earlier paragraph that I bailed on because it didn't make any sense to me. Okay. All right. Next item. Okay. Item number 2. Remini is a liar, has no morals, and only wanted her name in the news. These statements come from interviews with Remini's father, George, and George's wife, Dana, published on Scientology's websites. In those interviews, George and Dana stated, Remini has no morals because she romantically pursued a married man with children. Remini would do anything to get her name in the news, including fabricating stories about George beating his children and being a pimp and a gangster and a coke dealer. Remini earns a living making up lies and just wants to make things up to sell time on TV. These statements are quintessential examples of rhetorical hyperbole and language used in a loose figurative sense. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. The setting in which the statements were made, Scientology's website, designed to rebut Remini's campaign against Scientology, reinforces that conclusion. Moreover, Remini cannot establish actual malice. There is no evidence that Scientology knew the statements were false or harbored any doubt, let alone serious doubts, as to their truth. The statements are simply quotes from Remini's relatives, and Remini presented no evidence to demonstrate a low community assessment of those relatives' trustworthiness or unsatisfactory experience with them by Scientology. This is fascinating stuff, you guys. I really wish I had been a lawyer. Although, honestly, it would suck to work the kind of hours that lawyers have to work, and it would suck to have to deal with so much paperwork. It's just such fascinating work. It's not something I want to do so badly that I would go back to school for it. But it's one of those things where, if I had to do it all over again and I could spend those, late teen, early 20s years getting into that career, it'd be super fascinating and fun. Okay, item 3. Remini would not help to pay for George's cancer treatments. Nowhere in Leah's complaint or her opposition to the anti-SLAPP motion does Remini identify with specificity when and where Scientology used the quoted language. Okay. And then they're just repeating a lot of language in the previous argument that they made, the previous similar argument that they made. So we won't read every word, but it says, indeed, Remini's summary is materially inaccurate. The Scientology did not state that Remini would not help to pay for George's cancer treatments. Instead, Scientology published an interview with George titled Leah Remini Abandoning Her Father in His Greatest Time of Need, in which George addresses Remini's failure to pay for one particular cancer biopsy, not any other cancer treatment. Because the alleged statement pled in her complaint does not exist, Remini cannot meet her burden at step 2. Interesting. If Remini is relying on the actual statements in the article, those statements are protected. In the interview, George stated that Remini refused to pay for a $1,500 cancer biopsy. Scientology's statement that Remini abandoned her father is Scientology's own interpretation of that interview, published alongside the interview itself, thereby leaving the reader free to draw his own conclusions. It is hyperbole and moral criticism of Remini's relationship with her father. As to the allegation in the interview, that is, Remini refused to pay for the $1,500 cancer biopsy, Remini presented no evidence it is false. In her declaration, Remini stated she flew George to LA, where he stayed for several months for cancer treatment she paid for. But Remini's declaration is silent on the fact George raised in his interview. Remini failed to pay for the $1,500 cancer biopsy. This is unbelievable. They're like, we're not even disputing the fact that Leah Remini may have flown her father to LA and paid for months and months of extensive cancer treatment. But there was that one biopsy. And that's all we were saying. So it's incredible. I guess they're not even saying it's what they're saying. They're like, it's all George said. Moreover, Remini cannot establish actual malice. She submitted no evidence that when Scientology stated Remini abandoned her father, it was aware of obvious reasons to doubt that belief. To the contrary, as the interview demonstrates, the statement has some element of truth and is thus logically less susceptible to a finding of actual malice. Okay. Nor can Remini establish actual malice as to the publication of the interview itself. Remini presented no evidence to demonstrate a low community assessment of George's trustworthiness or unsatisfactory experience with him by Scientology. Though Remini states that she told Scientology, quote, how difficult my relationship was with my father, and that I continually wanted to reestablish a relationship with him and provide support, she never states that she paid for the $1,500 cancer biopsy, nor did she present evidence that carries a doubt-inducing quality. For example, financial records indicating she did pay for the biopsy or any other treatment. That failure is particularly glaring in light of Remini's allegation that her father's statements were contradicted by email communications and financial records. Remini never met her burden of presenting those communications and records. This is sort of a recurring theme in Scientology's argument in this appeal, that the judge seemed to rely on claims that Leah made in her affidavit, but did not require any of the evidence to be shown that backed up those claims, and seemed to just assume that once this moved to trial, that evidence would be presented. Scientology is arguing, no, you actually have to have them show the evidence in order to argue in their favor, or to rule in their favor on this. That's how I'm understanding this, at least. Okay, item number 4. Remini turned her back on her half-sister when she was in the hospital. This allegation inaccurately quotes an article on Scientology's website stating Remini turned her back on her dying half-sister Stephanie and Stephanie's pleas for financial help. The article notes that Remini made tabloid infamy for that behavior, referring to a quote in the National Enquirer from Donna Fiore, Remini's former stepmom, who said Remini turned her back on her half-sister Stephanie while she was dying, and I'm furious about it. Scientology's statement is protected rhetorical hyperbole and language used in loose figurative sense. Okay. Again, they're using language that they've already used a whole bunch. Okay, so okay, not only did Fiore say that Remini turned her back on her half-sister, but Remini's father, George, and his wife, Dana, stated in an interview that Remini told Stephanie to get charity care for cancer treatment, and that Remini got upset when another relative set up a GoFundMe. Scientology is entitled to its own interpretation of those facts, and the quote from Fiore is published on Scientology's website, leaving the reader free to draw their own conclusions. Wow. Okay. So you guys see what I'm saying, though, right? They're basically saying we are not the ones who have said any of these things. Other people have said these things. We have interpreted them in our own ways. And any place where we have published our interpretations of these things, we have published the original information so that the reader can come to their own conclusions. Now, guys, in my videos, I've said I'm someone who can be very easily persuaded by a strong logical argument. I'll see a documentary and I'll be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everyone needs to find out about this immediately. And then I'll see the documentary debunking the documentary and I'll go, oh my God, this is even more amazing. Everyone needs to find out about this immediately. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about the arguments being made in this appeal. These seem like really good arguments to me. But I'll probably still feel that way until I see the counter appeal or whatever they call it. It will be very interesting to see how that reads. Okay, let's see. All right, they're making the same argument again and again, so we'll fast forward. Okay, item number 5. Remini ransacked her dying grandmother's apartment. This allegation appears to target an email from Leah Remini's cousin Robert, published on Scientology's website, in which Robert states that Remini ransacked her grandmother's apartment. Scientology's publication of that email is protected activity. The statement is not provably false. First, the statement is not a provably false assertion of fact. It is the speaker's own interpretation of Remini's handling of her grandmother's belongings and apartment. And Scientology published the email in which the statement originated, leaving the reader free to draw his own conclusions. Okay. The statement is corroborated by Remini's father, George, and his wife, Dana, who gave an interview stating that Remini directed her sister, Nicole, to take everything from her grandmother's apartment, and that Nicole took items from the apartment, including a wedding ring, while the grandmother was in bed. Okay, good. Same old, same old. Can't establish malice. No evidence. Scientology subjectively believed that Leah Remini did not do these things, and Leah Remini did not provide any evidence that Scientology was aware of her denial. I feel like it's going to keep going on like this over and over. Item number 6. Tweets that Leah Remini's rap sheet includes inciting hate from vandalism to murder and asserting a man inspired by her hate speech murdered a 24-year-old Scientologist. Okay, now I have not read in detail Scientology's response to every one of these items. And I am finding out in real time, as you are, how exactly is Scientology going to explain why it is okay for them to say that someone inspired by her hate speech murdered a 24-year-old Scientologist? Is it going to be the exact same way they've already done it in the previous 5 items? Or are we going to get any surprises here? Let's find out. The trial court ruled that the statements that Remini incited violence, bigotry, or hate are non-actionable. But the trial court's ruling did not reference the tweet in paragraph 105. The statements in that tweet are not provably false assertions of fact. They are rhetorical hyperbole and language used in a loose, figurative sense. They are too elastic and contain too many elements of subjectivity to be susceptible of proof or disproof. Wow. Let's take another look carefully at the exact statement. Leah Remini's rap sheet includes inciting hate from vandalism to murder and asserting, the tweet asserted, a man inspired by her hate speech murdered a 24-year-old Scientologist. I'll tell you where a little bit of the subjectivity might be entering in here. Scientology could argue that subjectively, somebody could understand this tweet to say that the man was not specifically inspired by Leah to commit the murder, but that he's a man who found Leah Remini to be an inspirational person and was inspired by her in general. And then he also murdered someone. I think that's the kind of slipperiness that Scientology is wielding here as a shield against. Well, they're saying it's just too subjective to even possibly be proven true or false. And that's an interesting position to take. Wow. As the trial court explained, what it means to incite violence, bigotry, or hate, or to praise criminal conduct is simply too vague to be proven true. The same holds true for the assertion that Chin Jen Ye's murderer was inspired by Remini's hate speech. The setting in which the statements were made, the Stand Monitor Twitter account focused on exposing discrimination against Scientologists and challenging it. Sorry, guys. Challenging anti-Scientologist rhetoric confirms their rhetorical nature. Given the history between Remini and Scientology, the Stand account is a quintessential example of a setting in which the audience may anticipate efforts by the parties to persuade others to their positions by use of epithets, fiery rhetoric, or hyperbole. Moreover, this is not an opinion for which the speaker has no factual basis. To the contrary, there are direct links between Remini's rhetoric and violence. One, McMurtry cited Remini as an inspiration just days before driving a car into a church. By the way, I think that's not true. Two, after attacking Scientology staff in Los Feliz, Don Myers, accredited contributor on Remini's show, this is Angry Gay Pope, yelled, "I am setting you up to be on Leah Remini's show." I totally believe that Don said that. Chin Jen Ye's murderer visited an anti-Scientology website with links to Remini's content, which the church learned from the assailant's mother just days after the attack. Again, that could be true or untrue just because the mom said it. Stan's statement is therefore one of a number of possible rational interpretations of whether Remini's vicious and hateful rhetoric inspired anti-Scientology crimes. Indeed, courts regularly hold that statements about a person's state of mind or motives are non-actionable. That is fascinating. Anyone is entitled to speculate on a person's motives from the known facts of his behavior. For example, the Eighth Circuit held that statements that the plaintiff pushed the decedent over the edge was the straw that broke the camel's back and was the reason for the decedent's death were the defendant's protected opinions of why the decedent took his own life, not objectively verifiable facts. The same holds true here. The opinions of the state of mind of each attacker are non-actionable. Remini asserts that she has never been investigated for or charged with inciting McMurtry or the Australian murderer, but Scientology never stated that Remini had been investigated or charged. And regardless, Remini's assertion ignores that the statements must be viewed from the perspective of the average reader of the publication, and not that of an extra sensitive reader or an expert who might view them as conveying some special meaning. The average reader of the Stand account would view the statements that Remini incited hate and inspired violence as rhetorical hyperbole, not as a claim that Remini was investigated for or charged with criminal incitement. Wow. In any event, Remini cannot establish actual malice. There's no evidence that Stand subjectively believed Remini did not inspire violence and vandalism, or that Stand entertained serious doubts about that. Okay? And kind of continues to use the same language here. Remini presented no evidence that reflects on the subjective attitude of Stand at the time Stand made this statement. And specifically, no evidence that Stand was aware of obvious reasons to doubt the truth of the statements. Okay. All right. Item 7, tweets that Remini's rap sheet includes attempted bribery and tampering with justice. See, this is why I find it so interesting, because I'm learning things every step of the way. You know, I would have assumed that an official Scientology account putting into writing in a public space that Remini's rap sheet includes attempted bribery and tampering with justice would be actionable. I mean, obviously, as a layman, I would, as a layman, I would have been like, you can't do that. But apparently, you very much can. I mean, at least that's the argument, at least here, right? I guess we'll see what the response is. Okay, so let's see. The reason they can say Leah Remini's rap sheet includes attempted bribery and tampering with justice is rhetorical hyperbole. Language used in a loose, figurative sense. Okay. They are simply subjective interpretations of Leah Remini's own words and conduct. Remini described her efforts to bribe a police captain, telling him she would double the money. Oh my God. Have you guys already heard this story? It is insane to even think that this is how Scientology would characterize what Leah said in this story. And again, my memory is not perfect. The information may not have been perfect at the time. My recollection of this story is Leah and some other ex-Scientologists, I believe, went into one of the LAPD offices for a meeting with the police chief or the captain of the district, whatever. I don't understand the whole org structure perfectly. And on the wall was a picture of a Scientologist. And Michael Pena, because Michael Pena has played a police officer in a number of movies. And there might even have been, I swear to God, if my memory serves me correct, there might even have been some sort of a letter on the table from Scientology. Or yeah, and you guys know that the Celebrity Center, the Scientology Celebrity Center in Hollywood, every year does a fundraiser for one of the police charities and presents them this big check. And there was some letter. There was some letter from Scientology to this police official. And Leah said, how much money are they giving you? How much money are they giving you? I will double it. I mean, you could easily call it a joke, but it's also like if what Leah was saying that she would do was a bribe, then that means that what Scientology was already doing is a bribe. Because Leah was just offering to give them more than what Scientology was already giving them. I guess the argument would go both ways here. It's rhetorical hyperbole. Okay. Remini filed a false missing person report alleging Shelley Miscavige, the wife of David Miscavige, was missing. Within hours, police determined Remini's report was unfounded. When Remini again referred to her false police report in a tweet a decade later, police responded with a press release stating they closed the investigation. Okay, what was the original thing? Oh, tampering with justice. Oh, okay. So they're calling the missing persons report on Shelley Miscavige tampering with justice, and then I guess making a tweet about it, tampering with justice. Okay. Stan's tweet links to a webpage and video identifying those facts. Thus, the statement is Stan's own interpretation of Remini's words and conduct published on Stan's Twitter with links to supporting evidence, thereby leaving the reader free to draw his own conclusions. Okay, fine. Same stuff as before. Exact same stuff as before. Okay. Item number 8. So basically, it's all going to be the same, you guys. But we'll just go down the list. We don't have to read the arguments for each item, since as you can see, the arguments are all extremely repetitive. But Remini, item number 9. Remini is an unhinged religious bigot and a disgrace to women of valor everywhere. Okay. So again, non-actionable. It's vigorous epithets. It's imaginative expressions of contempt. Amazing. Yep. Adversarial setting. Okay. Leah Remini cannot establish actual malice. There's no evidence that Stan objectively knew these statements were false. Okay. Item number 10. Remini filed a false police report and then attempted to extort Scientology. All right. What does this one refer to? Police determined within hours that Leah Remini's missing persons report about Shelley Miscavige was unfounded. And when Remini reiterated the allegation on Twitter, police immediately issued a press release stating the investigation was closed. Okay, so where's the extortion occur? Moreover, after Scientology sent letters to ABC News accusing Leah Remini of filing a false police report, Remini accused Scientology of defamation, demanded a public apology, and $500,000. And later increased her demand to $1 million. Where did this occur? Okay, thus, Scientology's statement that Remini filed a false police report and attempted to extort Scientology is not an opinion for which the speaker has no factual basis. Blah, 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 blah. Where the hell did Leah ask for an apology and $1 million? I don't remember that happening. Okay, same arguments, cannot prove malice, no evidence that Scientology didn't believe the statements to be reasonable. Okay. Item 11. Leah Remini abused family members, including her half-sister Stephanie and her father, George Remini. All right. Same arguments. Scrolling down. Item 12. Article titled Leah Remini to Dying Sister. Get charity care. All right, fine. 13. Leah Remini's daughter left her toxic home life because Remini called her a cunt all the time. Okay. This is not a provably false assertion of fact. See, I would guess that this specific one is a provably false assertion of fact. I mean, particularly if Leah's daughter filled out an affidavit saying that. But I guess earlier they did say that just because you deny it's true doesn't actually, just because you swear under oath that something is not true doesn't actually make it not true. Okay. The statement that Leah's daughter left her toxic home life is rhetorical hyperbole. Having a toxic home life is an elastic phrase with elements of subjectivity, and it is not susceptible of proof or disproof. Fine. We'll fast forward here. Item 14. Oh, okay. That doesn't seem to be much of anything. Okay. Oh, let's check this out. Okay, protected boycott activity directed at iHeart Radio. Paragraphs 137, 250, and 264 allege that Scientology contacted iHeart Media executives and employees to persuade them to end Leah Remini's podcast. Remini failed to identify the substance of the defamatory statement that Scientology allegedly made to iHeart. Remini cites only an article stating that Scientology emailed and called iHeart employees, but the article does not state what Scientology said to those employees. Remini therefore fails to meet her burden at step 2. In any event, the communications to iHeart are not actionable because, as explained next, boycotts and communications like these are non-actionable under the First Amendment, and Remini cannot establish actual malice. Okay, hold on, guys. Hold on. Oh, guys. Oh, geez. I get all phlegmy when I do these long talking videos. It doesn't happen in real life. It just happens when I do these videos because videos are not real life. Okay, so after iHeart Radio canceled the Fair Game podcast, I remember they switched to AudioBoom. So let's see here. This is probably the exact same thing. Paragraphs 142, 146, 251, and 263, protected boycott activity directed at AudioBoom. The allegations in these paragraphs are directed at Scientology's communications with a different media partner, AudioBoom. Okay, this is really the exact same thing, so we don't have to read it all again. All right, that's the exact same thing. Oh, geez. Okay. Item number 18, paragraph 148. Leah Remini obviously agrees it's not a big deal to sexually abuse women. Okay, Leah Remini's chopped up quotation implies that Scientology quoted Leah Remini as saying sexual abuse is not a big deal. That is misleading. The actual article shows Scientology did no such thing. The article appears on Stan's website. Stan first states the facts. 1, Remini testified under oath that rapist Paul Haggis was the real victim. And 2, sexual abuser Les Moonves attended Leah Remini's birthday party where Remini was pictured embracing him. The article then says, Remini obviously agrees with the actions of these men or feels that it's not a big deal to sexually abuse women because if she felt otherwise, she would cease associating with them. Thus, the context establishes that Stan's statement is not a quote of Remini. Statements must be read as a whole in order to understand its import and the effect which it was calculated to have on the reader, and construed in the light of the whole scope and apparent object of the writer. Rather, the quotation marks are used to identify a feeling of indifference or apathy towards sexual abuse. Remini feels that it's not a big deal, thereby opining that Remini harbors that feeling. That opinion is Stan's own interpretation of the facts, which are identified alongside the statement, leaving the reader free to draw his own conclusions. Okay, good. All right. I think everything else after this, they're just going to make the same exact type of argument. And so there you go, guys. That is how Scientology explains why it is their constitutionally protected speech and activity to maliciously harass and attack former members. And there you have it, all laid out crystal clear in writing. I cannot wait to see the counterfiling. Okay, we have a bunch of starred comments here. Let's see what we got, and we'll wrap this one up. Tallman's Sonnies have illegal tins. Hello, Ruby, and thank you for being a channel member for 11 months. Yet if, okay, so they go, yet if anyone behaves like that to them, yes. Pause for Andrea. The courts need to stop giving a free pass to cults, high control groups, and actually enforce the laws of the land. Old Frizz, can Leah depose these friends accusing her? So that's a good question. Obviously, you know, as just a layman myself, I guess I would argue that her lawsuit is against Scientology. So if she were to depose her friends and sort of prove that her friends were lying, that doesn't prove that Scientology had reason to believe they were lying at the time. And so I don't think it would be relevant, but that's just my opinion. Claire with an I, any reasonable person would acknowledge that Scientology goes very hard and throws their massive tax-free treasure trove at any and all critics. Harassment and lies galore, and also surveillance obsession. Absolutely. CO Belf, can Leah get an affidavit from someone who used to be involved in producing the hate videos to say people are tacitly encouraged to lie? CO Belf, that is an excellent question, because as we know, Mitch Brisker has said that he was involved in the production of many of these hate videos. And so it does seem reasonable to think that testimony to that effect could be pretty powerful. But again, as a layman, how much weight would the judge put on statements like that from Mitch, even if the judge wanted to stipulate that Mitch was telling the truth? If Mitch wasn't able to specifically testify that that is exactly what occurred in these instances that are in Leah's lawsuit. I don't know. I don't know how that would work, but excellent question. Abigail, I love how Aaron is substituting church with Scientology now. I do try to do that when I'm reading documents, just honestly for clarity. And honestly, people get really pissed off when I say church, but that's not why I do it. Thank you, Abigail. Claire with an I, it is not difficult. A reasonable person would acknowledge that Scientology uses tax-free millions to attack their critics. That's right. The problem is that it seems to be perfectly legal to do so. Lisa Kelson, wouldn't Scientology have to prove the statements they heard before they repeated them? I wonder what the law is on that one. They make it as difficult as possible. Yeah, well, after reading their argument time and time again, They just it seems like if Leah were able to prove that even in Scientology, the community tended not to believe this person about various things, that would actually matter. But that short of that, without being able to prove that this person within the group was known to be a problematic source of information, it seems like there's a big barrier there in proving that Scientology had a reason to think that they were not being honest. Old Frizz, gotta feel sorry for Leah being accused of such horrific stuff about how she treated her own family. Yeah. TB, are the lawyers also Scientologists or just really good at nitpicking? This particular lawyer is not a Scientologist, and almost all of Scientology's lawyers are not Scientologists. One of the few big exceptions to that is, of course, Kendrick Moxon. Stephen Hayes is another Scientologist attorney that has represented Scientology in various proceedings. And there's two other attorneys that were mentioned recently as being connected to RFK Jr., but I do not remember their names. And I'm not sure if those attorneys have ever represented Scientology itself or are involved in certain lawsuits that that Scientology simply supports. Like, for example, there's a lawsuit against the manufacturer of the machines used in electroconvulsive therapy. And there's two Scientology lawyers that I think are the ones representing that case. And yet, that strictly speaking, that's not a Scientology lawsuit. But I do wonder if Scientology is behind the scenes funding that lawsuit. Okay, let's see. Lisa Kelson, they don't say in our opinion. They make it sound like a fact. Eileen Bradley, so they don't like people turning their back on their families, huh? Isn't that interesting? Yes, that is interesting. Claire with an I, Scientology intentionally inflames everyone, so they should talk. The effect of her defamation can clearly be connected to the internet, law, and physical guerrilla warfare Scientology employs. Angel of Thunder, she has serious grounds for a defamation case. Yeah, I mean, I think, is defamation one of the causes of action that she's suing for? I actually don't recall. I have the lawsuit here somewhere. I just don't want to make you guys wait while I look it up. But yeah. Never in Aaron. Usually I have a joke or something lighthearted to say, but this is real as a heart attack. Angel of Thunder, Scientology bribes LAPD regularly, giving them kickbacks. Give everyone a break. Lisa Kelson, Scientology produces the material, presents it as fact by not saying this is just their opinion, makes everything okay. They are reaching there. We'll find out soon enough. Rochelle, these are foul things being said about Leah. Oh my God. Have you guys ever looked at the Stand League Twitter account? I mean, the stuff they're saying about Leah, like they say just as much, equally horrific, if not more horrific things about a bunch of the rest of us as well. It's literally all those accounts exist for. Sweet. What does this say? What does this say? Sweet goth. Oh, I figured this out before. Sweet goth BF TV. I forget what it is. Just making stuff up. Great job, Scientology. Acute pumpkin clodhopper. Hot take here. I believe that iHeartRadio was weak and should have been informed before they signed a contract with Leah that they would be harassed by the cult. Well, that is what was so disappointing about AudioBoom and iHeart, is of course they knew. This was after the Scientology in the Aftermath TV show had already finished. It was after, of course they knew. I think it wasn't getting angry letters from Scientologists that these guys were afraid of. I think it was actually losing sponsors. And my understanding is that individual producers for the show at iHeart and AudioBoom were being personally harassed. So it's one thing for the company to be like, yes, we know what we're signing up for here. It's another thing for a producer to then be assigned to the show and then be personally harassed in their personal private life to be like, I'm not going to work on this anymore. And then putting the company in a somewhat awkward position of, do they assign someone else to the show to get harassed just like the other person was? And is there any, is there any liability attached to that for the company, for putting an employee possibly in harm's way? So it gets complicated. That's why YouTube is the way to go, guys. YouTube is the way to go. There's no reason, whatever podcast was being done, there's no reason that exact same podcast couldn't be done on YouTube. But who knows? All right, guys, that is it for now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. There's still more to come later today. So stay tuned, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,